I'll do that. I'll look at yours and then DM him as well, just to see if I can get on that.
You can say I referred you.
Perfect.
If you want.
Thank you.
Then he's like, who's this?
That'll get me in.
He just cuts all ties with Emily. That's it. What kind of a recommendation is this?
Why would you intro this asshat to me?
How little do you think of me?
God, Abdallah's the worst.
Hi there, and welcome to the JRPG Pursuit, a podcast for all things JRPG. I'm Emily.
I'm Branden.
I'm Abdallah.
And we have quite an episode for you guys today. Before we get into the hellscape that is JRPG remakes and remasters.
Not even hiding how we feel about it.
No.
Straight into the hell. The hell of it.
First, I'd like to thank all of our members. You guys are wonderful. We love interacting with you guys on Discord and whatnot. And if you are interested in becoming a member, you hit the join button on YouTube, and we also have memberships available on Spotify. But let's get into today's episode. I did lead it quite a way.
Yes.
Yeah, let's get into the hellscape. Let's dive into hell.
I mean, it's hard to argue that there's not a lot of negatives to it. Like if you're being really diplomatic, you could say, well, sure, there's some positives, the accessibility of certain games, but there's a lot of negatives too. And it's probably better to talk about them, right?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like there's been so much positivity in the JRPG space. Like, oh, we're getting this game again. Oh, we can actually play this on modern, equipment and whatnot, which I think is great. But we kind of downplay the negatives that we've been seeing because we've been just so inundated with all these remasters in particular. So that's kind of what we wanted to get into today.
Yes.
So who'd like to start us off? I guess what you guys have observed these last couple of years.
Yeah, it just in a broad sense, before we start diving into particular games that have had significant issues or whatever, it has felt, and even beyond the JRPG space to an extent, but specifically in the JRPG space, that every company is just scrambling to grab that low-hanging fruit and produce these remasters that are basically just up-resed ports that are not optimized for modern hardware. I mean, technically you can play it, but it's not great. And a lot has been said about how it's the accessibility of these games. People can play them. It's good. Yeah, it is, I guess. But if they're getting a bad experience from the game, that's not part of the game itself, right? If it's a result of the port or the remaster that was done to it, then actually that's a net negative for the fandom of a particular game or a particular series. If I have never played a Tales game, and my first Tales game is the Tales of Symphonia remaster, which had a lot of issues when it came out, that affected the gameplay, right? That affected the actual gameplay of the game. If that's my first Tales of experience, then I might just be like, this isn't for me, and put it aside and not mess with any of the Tales games. And that's a fantastic series that has a ton of really, really good entries that person might just never try because that subpar remaster turned them off to it. So I don't know. That's just an observation. It's something I'm kind of worried about.
For sure. If you have a negative connotation towards just one entry that you've tried, it's hard to try another one, right? Even if people reassure you, it's just a bad port. It's not as good as the original. But if you don't have, access to the original, so you can't really see what it's like in its true colors, it's hard to know, was this actually a good game, or are people just talking it up and, have their rose-tinted glasses on?
Right. Yeah.
And I think we'll get into Tales of Symphonia later on, as we really dive into the details of that. But it's also just the whole idea of there's so many things that you have nostalgia for, and you really want to replay them. There's so many games that I want to replay in my backlog that maybe I don't want to go in and actually play it on, not all the time on original hardware. Not everybody has access to original hardware in general, or these games are way too expensive. So at the end of the day, we're not saying remasters are, inherently bad or anything like that, or the hellscape is real or anything like that. But in itself is that there's just a specific time and quality that we want to come to expect when they're doing these remasters. And, you know, in terms of what they're choosing to remaster, as well as to how they're remastering, because there's different types of remasters in terms of like, you know, if you're remastering something from, let's say, the 8-bit or like the 16-bit era, or if it's 2D type game and how that kind of scales and things like that, to like the 3D games that we kind of start to see, like Tales of Symphonia and stuff like that. So it's interesting, you know, seeing how developers or how publishers have kind of tackled these different areas and have succeeded and or failed in different areas. But we'll dig into those things as we kind of, you know, get more specific.
Yeah,
for sure. And I do want to note, we did make a remasters
we did
episode. It was one of our first episodes of this podcast where we did sing a lot of praises to. It's great to have a lot of these games more accessible.
Yes.
But
and we did
again, or go ahead.
Yeah. And we did talk about like the differences between remasters and remakes in clarity and how, what is that like? What are the, you know, the nuances and how we distinguish it? Because like, I feel like, you know, it's been a basic, you know, discussion on the internet as in general, like the usage of remaster and remake is kind of very loose. And it depends on the publisher and how they want to name their game. And sometimes it's not very accurate. So we dug deep into that in that episode. So if you want, go back and, you know, watch that.
Yeah.
See our takes.
This is the flip side of that episode's coin. This is the dark side of that episode's moon. We are we are the yin and the yang on this podcast. And we're proud to bring you both.
We're going full Sith today.
Young Jedi.
But I think, you know, we can start going into maybe more detailed or, you know, games that we kind of jump into. And I think Tales of Symphonia, since Branden already brought it up, is a perfect place to start.
Sure.
Yes. Because to this day, right, the ideal place to play Tales of Symphonia is the GameCube version, right? Not the PS3 remaster, not the Switch or the PS4 remasters.
Yes,
GameCube.
The GameCube is like the optimal version of it. I mean, it didn't have the extra. I think
there was some extra content. It wasn't as significant as like Vesperia's extra content.
It wasn't.
Right? It was the costumes and maybe some. Was there story stuff? I don't remember.
There was some story, but like I don't remember.
Yeah, but minor, right? And like I don't know, the GameCube original ran at 60 frames per second. Ran at 60 frames,
yeah.
So, you know, this applies maybe to you guys to an extent as well, but I can speak for myself. I'm not a big frames per second guy. It doesn't really matter to me. But in an action RPG like Tales, where you are relying on button inputs, like well-timed button inputs to be able to launch moves. Yeah. You know, it's important. It is actually important. So not saying that the game is terrible at 30 frames per second, but it is a noticeable knock against it. Right.
Yeah. Like it's something that I was like really shocked to hear. Cause like, and I get it that they wanted the PS3 version was based off of the was based off of the original PlayStation version of it, or the PlayStation 2. I think they had a PlayStation 2 version of it.
Yeah.
Like in the Jeff.
I thought it was the PS3 remake.
Was it the PS3 remake they did that for? Because like
that's what I heard.
I'm trying to remember.
There was
what
a Japanese only port.
Yes. And I don't remember exactly where it came from.
I think was that on PS2, and then they based the PS3 remaster on that.
I think that was the case.
The latest remaster is based on that, so it's like
I think so. That sounds
like
right. That HD remaster, whatever they called it.
Yeah,
so it's a game of telephone where every time it gets remastered, we're losing a little bit more of what made it good.
And like what Branden was saying, it's like, you know, at the end of the day, you know, for a typical JRPG where you're not doing action combat, it doesn't really matter in terms of like 30 FPS, 60 FPS. You can get by with those things. Like 60 FPS is just great for just the fluidity of movement, like on the screen. It just looks nicer. But it's not going to affect gameplay in a turn-based, you know, game like that. Right. But, you know, Tales being a very action-oriented combat, you definitely want to have, you know, the more fluidity to that. And that's just like talking about like if we were playing it on, let's say, the PS4, PS5, the Switch had a rough time of it. And I think that goes across all remasters that we'll probably be talking about in this episode is that sure, like it'll run fine on the PS4, PS5 version for the most part, but the Switch version will always be kind of
noticeable downgrades for sure.
Yeah, like poorly optimized, I think.
I think for Symphonia in particular, though, there was like these white screens whenever you go into the combat, right? That was really jarring to people. And I think for the PS4 version, they reduced that a bit, but Switch was really noticeable.
Yeah, because I think it was like the loading probably took
it was the loading
longer
times
on the Switch. So those like were very obvious when you got those like white screens, and they would stick around for a lot longer. And I mean, it was locked at 30, but it on the Switch it would not stay 30 frames either, I think.
Yeah, inconsistent, I think.
It was still inconsistent and
just not fun for an action game.
For an action game, if you're dipping under 30, it's going to be.
If it was turn-based, I could maybe ignore it. But action, it's very difficult to ignore that.
Yeah.
You might as well start over. If your action RPG is not maintaining at least, right, worst case scenario, 30 frames per second, locked.
Consistent.
Start over. Like you need to.
That's like an unfortunate like just not being optimized, and I think it's just either there isn't enough funding going to the development of
the
those
thing
kind
is,
of things.
This is through Bandai Namco. They should have a lot of funds, and they even issued an apology for Symphonia, but they didn't actually do any patches or ways to fix it. They just said, "Sorry, we'll do better next time."
Yeah,
right. So but you could do better this time. You know how every game has 5 million patches after it comes out, like. You could still do better. You don't want to? Okay. All right.
I guess not. They thought they sold enough or something and just move on to the next Tales of, which thankfully I think Grace's F was better when they brought that over.
Oh, not every developer can be like CD Projekt Red or who does No Man's Sky, who just can't.
Oh, Hello Games. Yeah.
Hello Games in terms of like just the constant patches and additions to that to make it refined.
They actually have some, heart and soul in trying to get it to work.
Yeah,
some of these companies,
because they care about it. Yeah, they care about it.
They care about their
Hello
IPs.
Games has spent years trying to make up for the disappointment that people felt when No Man's Sky came out because they care about it. Like it's their baby, and they wanted it to be good. And
exactly,
Bandai Namco in this particular situation was like, you know what I hear a lot, the buzz around the internet is people like this Tales of Symphonia game that we put out like 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. We should just do that again. Why don't we just do that again? And somebody at the water cooler is like, well, it's not as simple as that, right? Like we need to port it. We need to remaster it. People are going to expect a bare minimum of, and the guy's like, shut up, just make it happen. You've got $20, like it's not, the execs that are making these decisions don't always actually care. They may not have even been present when the original game was made. So it just comes across as that cynical cash grab.
Exactly. And they're probably allocating very small reresources and a team to farm it out. Like it might even be their own development team. Like we've known
I think
a couple
often,
of companies.
Often it's being farmed out to third parties. So
And with like that game specifically, it was at a time when it was early stages of like these remasters coming out, and especially for Bandai Namco, it was their first like soiree into like it was their first like into the tales of like getting deep
on the Switch platform. I agree, but they've done remasters and ports before.
They've done remasters and ports, but like this is like in this current era of like
this gen, whatever it is.
Yeah, this gen of them going back through their back catalog as they're trying to redo all of like a lot of these older games. I don't think they thought it was going to stick, and they put very little. Easy,
right?
Yeah,
just copy paste.
They thought it was going to be easy, just like take the PS3 port and just like upscale it a little bit, and just that's going to be fine. You don't have to do anything else to it. But like at the same time, I'm curious to see how like they thought that was going to work, because like the PS3 engine itself, or like how it's like runs, like it's very different than anything else. So maybe that was probably part of the problem there.
And maybe the GameCube was harder to take. I'm not really sure exactly. The architecture is easier to port over and remaster. But
well, it was probably easier just to take the PS3 in general because it's already upscaled to an extent. And all that you have to do is upscale it a little bit more. And they probably didn't want to go reinvent the wheel with the GameCube version, even though that would have been nice to have a 60.
That'd been great. Yeah.
Yep.
Having like the GameCube version of that, but we don't all get nice things.
No, we rarely do.
No.
And then when we do, often we ruin them. So,
Yeah.
But
We
what
tend
other specifically Switch issues we've been seeing in a lot of these remasters
Switch
of these
issues.
older JRPGs that we kind of alluded to?
Name
did
any
Chrono Cross
remaster.
have significant frame rate issues on the
Yep.
Switch in particular?
It did.
It did.
Yeah. I remember
because
hearing
it
about
also
that.
Chrono Cross is a weird situation because like it runs at different frame rates depending on if you're on
the menu, right? It's like a different resolution.
It's a different resolution and frame rates depending on where you are, and it even like it chugged like on original plot, like on the original PS1, and like it had a lot of issues from that perspective, and I think the Switch really just kind of exasperated it a little bit further.
Yeah.
And so like that
sad.
part was really like the Chrono Cross Switch version is, I don't know, I haven't seen lately, like has it gotten any better?
I think that they've patched a lot of that.
Yeah. I don't know if it's 100% better, but it's at least a little bit better.
Yeah, it's improved from its release at least. So I bought it physically because it was only available through PlayAsia on the Switch as a physical. But I also bought it digitally on PlayStation 4. So that's actually where I played it. So I didn't have a lot of those issues, right? So I wasn't aware until more recently that was even a thing. But it's like, the Switch should easily have been able to handle the Chrono Cross remaster. And I get that the architecture is different.
PS1s games that they've already brought over.
Because like you have 8,
Final Fantasy
9,
ones and
7.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the Final Fantasy 8 remaster at some point here too.
Oh, we'll get into
among some of the other ones, but 8 in particular feels like it's stuck in my craw for some reason. But
but Chrono Cross, like I feel like it's also a victim of like of the Square situation where they had the backgrounds that were just all the assets were gone.
Yeah.
They lost all those assets. So like
no original assets, and
it's 8's problem too, right?
Yeah, that was a big issue in 8.
Yep.
And 9, right? Like
9
and 7. So like it's like the one issue that even most people that are against AI being used in development are like generally fine with is like AI upscale your backgrounds, guys. Like that's okay. Like it's fine. You can run it, tweak it. Yeah. Let's do that. But they're like, no, we're just this is it. We took this 240p image and you are going to blow that up to 4K and it's going to look terrible. And
it's so bad because like, and I think what you were probably going to get at, Branden, with Final Fantasy VIII is that just the upscaled character models
it looks
cleaned up,
so off-putting.
Like just like them against the background of these like really poor res like backgrounds. Yeah. It's just so
I don't know how to
uncanny valley kind of.
I don't know how to explain it except to say that I feel like my brain is going to get a paper cut looking at them. Does that make sense? Like like it's a weird optical. Like it just squicks me out. I don't care for it.
I do not like playing any of the remasters, honestly. Like for the like Chrono Cross or the Final Fantasy ones, it's just like the juxtaposition of like the bad, like the poor assets for the backgrounds and like the really clean looking character models just does not do it for me. So like I would more likely probably just rather just play the original on and get it all like in its original look.
And the clean character models that brings up another interesting point with these remasters. I feel like developers or publishers were misunderstanding what people wanted from like a higher resolution, right?
Yeah.
It really is the background graphics that we want to see cleaner and clearer and better. The characters, like the more fuzz you can put on that crap, the better it's going to look, because those were not, like, I'm sorry. I'm nostalgic for the PlayStation 1 era too. But objectively, I feel like I can look at it and be like, this looks like trash, guys. Like these guys have block hands. That's not what a hand looks like. I've seen hands before. I got two good ones right here. It's not what they look like. So I'm okay with like, like let's put some filters over these guys and like let's make the backgrounds look pretty. And they did the opposite. They did the opposite. And that's a bad call, I would say.
Yeah. If you go further up the timeline, like a lot of PS2 graphics or even Wii, like it's interesting how they also altered some of those character models in some of the remasters, like for Xenoblade and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition on the Switch, they made it more anime looking, which
Yeah.
I don't mind. Like
Yeah, I think it
I don't have any
fits.
nostalgia for the Wii. I thought that worked out. But if you look at Final Fantasy X, they really changed the character models in those remasters, I've noticed.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's for the better.
The Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, it's right on the border, right, between being a remaster and a remake. Like they did remake a lot of assets for that game, and
It's
that's
like
one of the areas
almost.
where I feel like if you're going to remaster a game that's old and has these kind of dated character models, doing something like that is leaps and bounds better than just smoothing the textures out and making them look like warm crap. Like that's not the right way to go. Xenoblade did it right. Now, if you don't like the anime look, okay, that's fine. That's a preference thing. It does, in my opinion, make it more in line with the rest of the series, the direction they were taking the characters in the rest of the series.
Yeah.
So it would be weird if that was the one game that didn't look like that, but you know.
Yeah.
And they changed X's character models too a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They did.
Get Elma.
So I know some people didn't like that either, but it's like that's a preference thing, and I could see having an issue with your preference for how the characters should look. But we're not saying like, you're not looking at that and being like, oh, it looks like
bad.
You don't care for, you don't care for the style. It's not graphically awful.
Exactly. Same thing with Radiant Historia, the DS versus 3DS. Like they totally changed the portraits there, which I don't think it looks bad, though some people had, qualms with some major changes of some of the character looks. But
I've heard a lot of people
the princess
online.
Had like
the princess had short hair, and then she looked long hair.
I heard a lot of people online kind of like have that, like they either love or hate, or not. I wouldn't say hate's a strong word, but like
I would say,
but it's like
the quickest turnaround of somebody becoming a hipster. Was like the DS version of Radiant Historia to the 3DS version.
Yes.
It's like, man, I've been playing this since back then when she had short hair and it was cool.
She looked more like a tomboy.
She looked more like a tomboy. Yeah, like I played Perfect Chronology first, so that was what I knew. So then when I went back and played the first one, I was like, what's with these weird looking pictures? I don't care for this. So I think it's just whichever one you played first is the one you like.
Yeah, there's first player advantage, if you will.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's true. It's like your first experience with the game, so you'll probably latch on to that version of it.
I thought you were going to say your first experience with love. I was like, cook, Dalla, cook.
That's for the after show.
The after show. Oh. Sorry, you have to wait.
No, I'm just.
I wanted to also talk about The World Ends with You. Final remix.
Yeah.
Because that is another one that's sort of on the border between a remake and a remaster. I would say it's definitely more remaster
I think so.
than like even Xenoblade Chronicles was. Because it is basically the original game. The graphics do look pretty good, right? Like they were not working with super old 1990 era PlayStation backgrounds. They were, hand-drawn, and there were sprites, and they redid sprites and animation. It looks good.
They probably had like high-res assets.
Yeah, high-res assets for sure. And that's what that's kind of as a baseline. I think we would agree that's a minimum, right? You have high-res assets. The issue I think with The World Ends with You Final Remix is it's not the same game, even though it is. It's the same game. It's the same story. But the game is just completely different, and it's in my opinion inferior in basically every way.
Yeah. It's like a product of the fact that like the DS version is like the mechanics of that are so ingrained into what that game is about. Like,
and to what the game is about, and it just took such great advantage of the weird hardware, the Nintendo's weird hardware, right? Like, what a cool concept. And the idea, for those of you who haven't played it, is on the DS. Playing The World Ends with You, you have two characters that you control in battle at the same time. On the lower screen, you control a character with the stylus, and you do different motions with the stylus to do different moves. It's kind of an action RPG sort of combat system. On the upper screen, you control a different character, and with that character, you input directional commands with your left hand to have them do different moves. And you can kind of get your characters in sync with each other, and that increases your damage. And it sounds like it would be the hardest thing in the world to do, but it's actually surprisingly intuitive. Like, it does take a little bit to get used to it. Yeah. It's not like you pick it up and it's the easiest thing in the world. but it's very rewarding and it's very cool. It does such a good job of like integrating these weird styles of play and making you think in a different way than you've ever thought playing a role-playing game before. The Switch version, notably, only has one screen, right? Now, there were a couple of ways they could have gone to solve this problem. One way, the way I think they should have gone, was to split the screen down the middle and have the character you control with the D-pad on the left and the character you control otherwise, with the touch screen or with the joysticks or whatever, on the right. And then you would still have the dual character control. It would be basically the same game. What they did instead was completely redesigned the combat system and made it kind of dull. I don't know what if you guys played it, what you think, but like,
well, it just became a normal
Switch one.
Yeah, like it took away like
everything great about it.
Yeah,
Did they try to make it like a rhythm game almost?
I mean, there was some, I mean, there was also there were kind of some rhythm elements in the original,
game.
but like, it just didn't work, and to the point where like I loved the original, I loved it, and I was excited to play the final remix version because I knew there was some extra content at the end. There was like, leading into potentially the sequel. And so I was really excited to play it. I had to put it down after like 3 hours. I was like, I can't play this. It's like ruining my memories of the game.
Oh man.
And I don't usually feel that way about remakes or remasters. Like I'm always in the camp of like, just ignore it if you don't like it. Like just play the original. But I was like, I need to stop playing this because I feel like it's going to ruin it for me. So I stopped.
It's a shame. And I did want to touch on like quality of life enhancements that a lot of these remasters have, which in some way are great, but it also kind of takes away from that original experience. So depending on the game and how they, change or alter the quality of life elements, sometimes you're just kind of running through a game without really experiencing it. Like you're not actually playing it. You're kind of watching it.
Yeah. All the Final Fantasy remasters have done those sorts of quality of life things, which on the one hand, like you say, is good.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's sort of a tacit admission that like this game wasn't great. Like, there were some things about this game that were maybe standard for the time, but do not hold up. Like there are tenets of gameplay that we look at and they have not changed much over the course of history. And we're like, that's a standard, Mario's jump. Like there's just various things that are just set in stone. But like certain things in JRPGs, like the need to grind so much.
Like the first Final Fantasy game.
Yeah, like the random encounters being so crazy frequent. They were like, here are some things where you can like give yourself 1 billion experience points and turn encounters off because you guys are right. That kind of sucks. So it's like, it's good that they're there if you want to experience the story, but you're right, Emily, you're not really experiencing the game in the same way. You're getting almost like a Cliff Notes version of the gameplay.
Yeah, that's what I did with the original Final Fantasy VII. Like the first half of the game, I played it to its original. I didn't really use any of the quality of life features. I wanted to see what would go on. But after a while, I got a little tired of the grinding. And so I did take advantage of basically enabling all of the quality of life features, which you don't have to do any of the materia systems or, get good at using different characters and knowing like when to steal different moves and really help you along that a lot of the, OG fans got to experience.
Right.
And I was a little torn because of that. Like in one respect, I got to finally just play it and see what all the hype was about, but I didn't really see it in the same light, I think, as those who grew up with it felt like.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't think I ever played the remastered version of like the Final Fantasy VII game. Like not the remake or the remastered version, like the.
It's interesting.
It's and like a reasonable person can't blame you for that either.
No,
Emily, right? Like it's like game design has moved on in such a significant way that to ask somebody to invest the time and patience into grinding through a game like that, the sort of game that we played when we were, kids and had nothing but time, right? We didn't have jobs, we didn't have responsibilities. It's not reasonable. So
no. Like what before we move on to anything else, I do want to make a random call out to Final Fantasy X remaster.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to that. Thank you. Yeah.
because, for the most part, it's fine. Like it does a lot of it fine. The one thing that drove me nuts and grinds my gears is their faces.
Yeah.
I don't know
what happened there.
what they were thinking, but like, if you look at if you put it side by side and you look at the PS2 images from the PS2 and then images from this HD remaster, and they look robotic. Like they just like took away all emotion from their face. And it's so like, it doesn't, I don't like it at all. And it makes me almost want to just only play the PS2 version because like it just looked so much better. Like
it's hard to look at.
Yeah, it's hard to, because like a lot of the emotional sequences in that game, and like everyone always talks about the laughing sequences and things like that. Like it looks a lot worse when it's in that. when
it's robots doing it instead.
I know
people.
It's just like I do not like what they did with the faces in that game, and it just makes me sad because I'm like,
yeah. And the new fans who've never played the original, they're just going to see it like that.
That's their only experience.
That's all they're going to know. I mean, everything else is fine. I think in the remaster, the quality of life stuff they added to it, it looks fine from all other aspects. I think. I don't know. Is there anything else you guys know about? Not that you weren't a big fan of.
I played the remaster.
Yeah.
Somebody who's brand new might not think anything of it. They may not care.
Yeah,
but
they won't.
At the same time, knowing that there's such an obviously better version out there is hard to swallow. Like, I would be really curious. And if you're listening and you know of an interview where this is talked about, I would love if you wouldn't mind linking it in the comments or shoot us an email, jrpgpursuit@gmail.com. I would love to know, like, if they've talked about why those changes were made. Why couldn't they just keep the facial structure and animation the same? Yeah. And maybe, I don't know, up the resolution or something. It didn't need to be changed from an artistic standpoint.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Like, that's why I want to know, like, from the mouths of the developers. I'm sure there was a reason they had to do that.
Yeah.
I would love to understand why.
Reason.
Like, maybe there's something that the PS2 does that they weren't able to like emulate. Because like there's things about the PS2 that you can't just, it's a product of its time and how it uses CRT televisions to like do certain things, and it shows things in a way that like benefits for using a CRT. So when you put it on an HD TV, it like makes it look really bad or does not look. It looks off.
I wonder if that's the case with 10. If you were to upscale it and run it on an HD TV,
no, it still looks this like, because like if you're using, let's say like in a retro tank or something like that, you're upscaling it. You can kind of get the same image for the most part, especially if you're using like RetroTink 4K that can push it a little bit.
Like they
further.
definitely didn't have as much to hide as a 16-bit or a 32-bit game, right?
Like there's like the whole aspect, like you can get into the technical stuff of it, is like, because it's like using 480i a lot of it. And so like you have the dithering and the interlaced images, which interlaced images like really bad on a like HD screen. Because or anything that's like in the, let's say 1080p or above, interlace is just going to look awkward, right? Because it's like made for having scan lines like fill in the blanks of these images and like make it like smooth
alternating
out.
Scan,
exactly. Like it's those games are designed interlaced so that way it would work like that. So like when you put it in like a 480p or 1080p or 4K, whatever it is, it just skews away from that. But with the face thing, it just feels like they just changed the face. So like, I don't know if whatever, like the technology, there's something in how it was originally done. So like, like Branden was saying, if there's anybody out there who knows the devs ever talked about it, like I'm also very curious to see, like,
love to know
why that choice ever came up. And if you guys are watching Square Enix and you want to talk to us,
you want to come on the show?
Yeah.
We'd love to have you.
I would love to talk about it. I mean, it would be nice.
Oh, of course. Big fans. But, I mean, legitimately, right? I think we all like Square Enix.
100%. Yeah, we love it.
For the most part.
Yeah.
I think
I don't like every choice they've ever made. I don't like every choice they've ever made, but
they have a lot of games. Like, there's not everything's going to be a hit.
I mean, I got a bone to pick with them about The Quiet Man, personally, but the rest of it, I think it's fine.
I did want to mention, though, kind of the motivation behind this episode was we've been noticing just so many remasters dropping left and right. And this whole year, I think in the JRPG space, it seems like it's mostly remasters or remakes.
Remakes, yeah.
And we're kind of wondering, what is the cost of this? Like, I think there's a lot of fans, right, who've never experienced these. They haven't a second try at playing them.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of players who are JRPG, veterans. They've played these games before. So what new things do they have to look forward to? And what things that are going to be defining this generation of JRPGs can we really highlight that's not a remaster or remake? It's getting towards the movie industry, how everything's become a remaster remake. Mm-hmm. And I'm really hoping that games kind of steer away from that path, because we've been seeing how it's really bad at the box office.
Yeah.
Just general perception.
Hopefully there's not some video game equivalent of Marvel, coming along and everything is a Marvel.
Honestly, it's feeling like that with the remasters.
It's becoming like that.
Yeah, they're the video game.
They're the Avengers.
Movies.
And what is it the other day?
Yeah, they're the equivalent. They're the video game equivalent of Marvel movies.
And the other day,
wrong with a Marvel movie. A lot of people love Marvel movies. I think they're fine. I'm not here to diss on Marvel movies, but they're everywhere. There's so many of them.
I know,
and they are not all of the same quality.
There's a little fatigue, I think, going on in that universe.
There's definitely fatigue. I mean, I went and just saw the Thunderbolts, and that was fun.
The new Avengers.
The new Avengers.
She's dropping it.
Yeah,
she's dropping it right here on the podcast. Right here.
But
everybody knows by now.
It's
everyone saw the posters, right?
Yeah,
I didn't see it.
It was a fun movie. I think.
I don't know how I know.
It was a fun movie, so I don't mind it. But
I heard good things about it. So they have highs and lows. But anyway, it's kind of like that with the remasters, right? Like there's some great remasters, but then there are those
based off what Emily was saying too. Is there's just so much going on right now, and was it the other day? I was reading on Twitter that Square Enix is kind of hinting at the fact that we're probably not going to see a new Final Fantasy, a new Dragon Quest, or a new Kingdom Hearts until 2028. So that is we are in 2025 right now. So
3-year drought.
That's a 3-year drought of major
and
big
new
things.
IP kind of licenses.
We've been talking about the upcoming drought since early on in the days of this podcast. I know we've talked about it at least once or twice
100%,
over the course of this podcast, because it seems obvious to us and has seemed obvious to us for a while that the slowing down of new games, of new IPs, of new entries and long running IPs, and the overabundance of remasters is just suggesting that there's going to come a point where we're just going to have to wait it out.
Yeah.
And I think we're entering that.
I think so.
I think we've been in that.
Yeah, we've been in it for a while. It's only going to get more noticeable as time goes on.
Because we're not really I mean, I can't think of anything outside of if we're not going to get Final Fantasy, a mainline title, or Dragon Quest 12 at this point, which has been in whatever development hell it's
probably no Harvestella 2.
We got to rub salt in that wound.
Why do you got to come at Branden like that?
No, that game was never getting a sequel anyway.
No, there was.
The guy left, right?
He did. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen. It's fine.
Pity.
Whatever.
But that leaves us there's going to be a lot of remasters and remakes coming across. I mean, we might get probably a new Tales of game at some point soon. I imagine. I know Bandai Namco is pretty, but they're also giving us hundreds of remakes at this point, or remasters. Mm-hmm. So I think
at the end of this year they'll announce a new game. I don't think it'll come out this year. Maybe not even next year. They'll announce something.
Yeah,
for their 30th anniversary celebration.
Yeah, I could see them doing an announcement at some point this year, leading into next year.
Whether or not they have something close, they have to announce something because it's the 30th. They have to.
Yeah, it can't just be remasters and remakes at this point. They have to they have to announce some sort of trailer of something's coming soon. And it's been a long enough time. I think we brought it up in a previous episode. That's been a long enough time since Tales of Arise, I think. So they've been cooking for a bit.
That was close to the launch of the PS5.
It was basically the launch because it was
months after. Yeah,
it came out.
One of the first games I remember getting.
Yeah, that was one of the the first RPG I think I bought for the PS5.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that was the only thing out at the time.
I mean, kind of. Yeah.
There wasn't much at the
right.
beginning of the PS5 era.
Mm-hmm.
It was slim pickings back then. But
there are a few developers, I think, that are pretty consistent with giving new content to their IPs, or at least new games. Koei Tecmo's been pretty good with the Atelier series. We had Yumiya earlier this year.
Yeah.
Falcon always, hits us with a new ease and Trails game almost annually at this point. Maybe it's going to be, now that they're doing Proud Nordics, we're probably not going to get the next ease game for a year or two. But
Yeah.
Trails is probably going to have a new entry, at least in Japan, next year, is my guess.
That's true.
Yeah.
And it might, you never know. We might get, within the same year, an English version of that. They're getting pretty fast. They're getting pretty fast.
Yeah, look at First Chapter. That's a simultaneous release.
Exactly. So we might actually
get a gap there.
They're wanting to do that. So I imagine that's...
So it might end up being one... Either a simultaneous release or a very close window.
Very close.
Of
we're not going to have
that
to wait.
coming out.
I see that.
Which is
potentially years like we used to.
I'm all for that. Please. But
in general.
I just looking at the remaster world and this is the thing is I feel like everybody wants to remaster everything out there, and I think that's great, and
that's understandable. There's a lot of beloved IPs that maybe haven't been around for a while, like Breath of Fire.
Yeah,
nice to see that revived, with the recent GOG release.
Yes, that was forced. They forced Capcom's hand by
that's great, and I'm glad they're doing that. But it's
wonderful.
it feels like kind of a hollow victory because it's not Capcom. It's I'm sure GOG was hounding them, let us do this.
At least they approved it, but yes,
yeah. And so that also has me sad a little bit because if Capcom's letting them do that, that means they had nothing and no plans in the works, which really depresses me because everyone's been shouting at Capcom for these things. So it just goes to show Capcom hands down, I think Capcom is probably the best development studio in as one of the AAA studios that's constantly pumping out games. The amount of Resident Evil games, the amount of
Monster
Hunter games and but they also hate some of their IPs. Hate is a strong word, but they hate it in the sense of the fans think they hate it because they will not touch any of their certain IPs that everybody loves.
They definitely play favorites.
They do,
I would say.
I know there's market stuff to consider with that, right? I'm sure the bigwigs at Capcom were well, if Breath of Fire was clearly something that was going to make us $1 trillion, you can have a new Breath of Fire. They're probably looking at it and be well, it didn't sell that well for us, and we have other series that we should focus on. But that just also goes to show you that the people in charge, like we were saying at the beginning, don't have love and affection for these particular series.
Yeah, maybe out of touch too.
Yeah, that's disheartening. They're out of touch with the hardcore fans. There's not as many JRPG. RPGs are a niche. They're more popular now than they've ever been, but they're still a niche, right? Yeah. But we are the most. If you do right by us as a demographic, as an audience, we will defend you. We will stump for you. We will tell all the people we know. We will not shut up about it. Some of us started stupid YouTube channels to talk about these games because we just didn't have an outlet to talk about them, right?
It's ridiculous.
This is what we do with these games. Call of Duty fans, there's a lot more of them. You're going to make a quick buck, but they're, they play the game for a while and they're on to the next thing. They're playing the next Call of Duty. They're playing the next Madden, whatever.
You got to give Call of Duty fans one thing is that they are ride or die. Is that the right way?
That's right.
Yeah, right. Ride or die for that series. Even if it comes out and it is complete trash, they will still buy it day one. Pay that $70, $80, or $100 deluxe edition. They will buy that no matter what. We're I feel with us, it's just if you do us wrong,
right? If you don't give us, we hold can
grudges.
Be picky.
We love hard and we hate hard. So we're very emotional people. I guess that's
so. If you have developers who are as passionate as the fans are, and if you don't have developers that are as passionate as your fans are, or more so, you need to get new developers because you need the developers to be, we need to be on the same page, or they need to be a little ahead of us for the game to really be good and to stand the test of time.
Right? It can't be so stale and just we make something just to make it.
Yeah.
And it's just
a quick way to make a little money off of a decaying IP or whatever.
And make it less beloved than it was.
And I feel like when you're choosing, like, okay, like, so, like, let's say when you're choosing to remake something or remaster something, I wish they would give more thought to, like, games that truly deserve it too. Like, there's, like, I know there's, like, it's all comes in budget. They're like, oh, we can make a quick buck. It's going to be an easy remaster. All we need to do is upscale it. But it's always nice when you see things like, let's say, for instance, the Dot Hack GU remasters that they did. And they took that and then they added an epilogue, or, like, was it the 4th episode, short episode that added to that kind of ends the story. And like things like
nice
that,
collection,
like a nice collection that, like, went a little bit above and beyond to kind of complete
Look at Xenoblade Chronicles X. They added an epilogue there to, tie in that story. Why does that game exist?
Right. There are people at those companies on those development teams that love the property, right?
Exactly.
Like that's an indicator that they care
that was
about
their
it.
thing.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's,
even though it's just one generation they hopped from the Wii U to the Switch, it was still a necessary remaster to make, I think.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And and that's choices. Like, that's what I would like to see as, like, we get into, like, remasters and remakes, is, like, really shine a light on the games that, sure, they need to have a proper version of them working on modern hardware so you can play it. But also there's a lot of games that, we can talk about Xenogears if you want for a second. It's like, there's a lot of games that deserve a remaster or remake that adds a little bit more value to that game, or fixes a lot of things that they weren't able to do at the time. Let's say with Xenogears, they didn't have the full budget to do everything that Takahashi-san wanted to do with that game.
To finish the game,
to actually finish the game itself. So, like, these are the kind of things that I'd like to see more thoughtful remasters and remakes. I mean, granted,
I'm going to be controversial and say we probably don't need a Chrono Trigger remaster.
Honestly, like,
the DS version's great.
Just having a good port, like,
and the PC version's good.
Yeah.
They fixed the issues, right, with the PC version. There were a bunch of issues in the beginning. They've basically ironed those out. Yeah, that's
totally playable, and I don't think they're going to improve that game any. Just making it HD 2D, I don't think it's going to be that much better.
I would love a physical, like a modern console physical release of Chrono Trigger.
That would be nice.
And if that's just a port,
I don't mind having
the
DS version personally, but
as
like a modern,
one of the most important games to me. Like, the more forms, like I have it in Japanese up on a shelf there. I have the DS, I have the original Super Nintendo. Like, I want that in as many forms as I can get it. So that would be fun.
I recommend if they have it on GOG. I don't know if it's on GOG, but if you get the DRM free, just have a USB and design it. Ask Jen to maybe make a cool little.
My wife Jen do it.
Cassette.
I'm not an artist, but
she can make like a little cool cassette tape for your USB. I think that'd be cute. That's the modern version.
That's a good idea. I like that.
I'll have to ask Jen as well, maybe.
Yeah, we can. Well, she's already making one. She can just make it two.
She just make two.
She tends to make me something Chrono Trigger related most Christmases, so that's actually that's a good idea to, like, put that on the list.
There you go.
But yeah, I guess the takeaway from all this, if we were to summarize it, is like we're going into this dark period. I think it's pretty obvious now.
Yes.
Where we're not going to see a ton of brand new games, new releases from IPs or new IPs in general. So we have to, as a RPG community, support the remasters that we are excited about and that are good, and send a clear message about the ones that are not good.
Yep.
And so that they learn, right? Like, if an action RPG is coming out with terrible frame rate, don't buy that game. Buy a different game and let them know. Like, you can email companies, right? Like, this is crazy, but you can just send them an email. And sure, one person's email is not going to change anybody's mind, but 10,000 people's emails might do something.
If you vote with your dollar, like, you
vote with your dollars, wallet, make your voice known on social media, on emails, whatever. Like, say what you're thinking about these
Raincoat. They were able to voice their opinion and get a game made and released globally.
Exactly.
So I think you could do something similar in the modern age, and not just be a sucker and buy whatever they give you.
Mm-hmm. It's the one thing I wish Pokemon fans would be in on, because, like, that's the one thing. It's like, it's like I get it. People are ride or die for Pokemon as well, but like it's just bad practice for the Pokemon company and for a game like
It's a disservice.
It's
really,
like-
it's just a disservice.
just like
And a slap in
to
the face.
release games in such a bad way, like and it just saddens me to see everyone kind of just like fight to say like no, it's like it's still a great game. I'm like
Defending.
but it could be better, and like we need to send clear messages to these like these developers, these publishers, or to the executives to say like, hey, like don't make these people forced to create a game within a year, giving them crunch time and like
So you
forcing
get
them
your
to
new
kind of
product out on the holiday season.
exactly like we
That's
need
why
to
they
send
do
a
it.
clear message that like this is like not only is it just like bad for just the people working on the game itself, because it's probably a small team forced to work like really unreasonable hours, and it's not capable of like keeping up with the Switch and the system itself, like the graphics in general, and
The
not
biggest
having
IP.
technology. Yeah, like it is the
Aren't
most
able
expensive.
to source this. It's ridiculous.
They are the most expensive like
They make
commercial
most
IP.
money, right?
Yeah, like they're the
Still.
number one like in the world.
Number
Pokemon
one.
Company is like number one. Like they make the most money outside of even like Disney. Like it's wild how much
they
money
they probably would say, how we're number one,
because they
we don't spend any money making our games.
We produce cards and people.
It's all the
Scalp
sell
them for us.
cards.
And then grown adults
it's all
are
for the
punching
scalpers.
each other in the face and trampling each other to get them. That's how we do.
Yeah. I will say, though, I am interested or curious how the Switch 2 upgrade is going to affect Scarlet and Violet. I have a feeling it's not going to be that much better.
No,
it's probably okay. It's probably serviceable. I think it'll be a serviceable upgrade, but we'll see.
Yeah.
It's like it'll hopefully it'll run at like a stable frame rate.
Yeah.
The resolution
not any
they're
like
saying,
weird pop-ins.
Yeah, I think it's probably still going to run into pop-ins though.
I mean, I'm getting the sense that it will probably be what the game should have been when it came out on the original Switch.
On the Switch, and not really a Switch 2 game.
Game is still very
not really
ugly.
a big upgrade to a new generation.
That's why it's free, right? I think if they were to totally repackage it and resell it, it would have to have a substantial upgrade, which
exactly.
they're not giving, so.
Because like the textures in that game were so glossed over, like it just looked when you compare it to like when you look at the horizon in like let's say Xenoblade Chronicles X, and you're looking at this whole like environment, and everything looks like you see like even from a distance, even on the Switch, like just you could see like the details to an extent, and then you look at like Pokemon Violet, and it's just like this glazed
Mud.
like like shades of colors in the horizon that just like looks like nothing. It's sad.
It looks like mud to me.
Yeah, like I just like
I feel
it's
bad.
not that I'm hating on Pokemon. It's just more like I expect that.
We have these
I expect
expectations.
more.
They haven't been met for
Exactly.
decades now.
Yeah, like I still have like a nostalgia for the like my childhood love for Pokemon. It's just that makes me sad that that's like where we're at with things, and it just
Pokemon fans, there was a movie, a major motion picture starring Ryan Reynolds
There was.
with your franchise.
Sure.
You should not be tolerating crappy, subpar experiences with your games. It is the lifeblood of the series. I mean, it shares that title with the card game, sure, but the video games have been monumentally
The cards are going to go out of
important.
vogue at some point, but if you could keep the video games alive,
the fans are very dedicated. So we're probably going to get a bunch of people in the comments are going to be like, "You guys are the worst. How dare you talk bad?"
We
about
are just
these-"
wanting you to advocate for yourself, okay? That's all. Like, I'm not a Pokemon player. I don't technically have a horse in this race. I don't think I'm ever going to get into Pokemon. I have too many other things that I'm into. I don't have space in my life for this giant franchise.
I'm only a second gen Pokemon fan. For the record.
But I still want this for the fans of Pokemon. Like, you all deserve better. Anyway, we kind of went on a tangent here.
That was a tangent right
Pokemon.
there.
It's not really a remake. I mean, they do
I
remakes
did this.
of Pokemon
I
games,
did
but
this. It was my fault.
It's okay. It's fine. It's
my
fine.
fault.
It's tangentially related, so it's fine. Yeah.
But yeah, let's hope that the future for JRPGs isn't as grim as we're making out to be with all these kind of hellscape of remasters that, for better or worse, some of them aren't so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope they like choose the right developers and the people who have like, especially when you're like, I think we were talking about this earlier on. I don't think we talked about it during the recording, but there's a lot of things that you need to be good at in terms of like, let's say remastering 16-bit, 8-bit era, like, old school, like retro games. And there's a lot of things, and it has to do with how you upscale and how you deal with like just the game in general as you're porting it over to an HD screen, 4K screens, and things like that. And so like you get things like, let's say with the Lunar collection, I've heard things in terms of like there being shimmering as you're moving, which is signs of like the resolution or like just the upscaling is not as good. And that kind of also happened with, I think Grandia had problems with that as well. So they kind of like, even with like the textures of the characters were kind of like glossy. I think they tried to do that kind of like a very like smoothed over instead of a high res like pixel version of the characters, and they did that kind of smooth, which looks really
it's a weird.
Fog
filter is what it looks
like.
We see that in like a lot of other games too.
And it's like, so I'm hoping like, as developers, as publishers start to look at remastering their games or their back catalog in terms of like PS2 games or PS1 games that need to be remastered, or even as far back as SNES, Terra Enigma, please. I'm hoping that they can get these things right, because like, sure, like we talked about in the beginning of this episode, is that it's great to have these things exist and modern ways to play them. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the modern way to play it is an optimal way to play it. And it's going to be a good experience for everybody.
Do the game justice.
Exactly.
It can't be worse than the original, or all you're doing is hurting. This is a lesson I hope developers actually do learn, or publishers learn, is that if the game is worse, if the remaster is worse than the game that you're remastering, you've damaged the brand.
Yeah.
And that's going to affect future releases for that IP. So
the bare minimum is just a straight port of it being as good as good. Just like that. That's the bar is low enough to be like, hey, just make it as good.
And I know people would still be disappointed with a remaster that was just as good as the original. They'd be like, well, this didn't really improve anything. I mean, at this point, I would still take it for a lot of these. Just I would
from an accessibility standpoint, why not?
Yeah, it's at least available, right? So anyway, thank you all.
Thanks,
you guys
everyone.
are amazing. Thanks for listening to us talk about video games.
We
enjoyed it. Well, I speak for myself, and I'll speak for them too. We enjoyed it. Of course we did. And we hope you did too. And again, just want to thank the members who support us. And if you want to join them, please join them. We'd love to have you. And I guess with that, we will bid you adieu.
Yeah, on to the after show for Pursuer level tier members.
Yeah, we'll see you guys there.
Pursuers, check it out. Everybody else, see you later.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.